Top 5 hammer-fired handguns in 2024. That's the topic du jour. Welcome to Gunfighter Life, where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, ballistics, the right way, with Almighty God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I am blessed to serve you as host today. Since today is more of a fun episode, we've done quite a few recently deeper dive episodes, getting down to the nitty-gritty. I thought it'd be a fun episode to just do a top 5. Gunfighting is not mostly about gear, but it's sometimes about gear. Hard to be a gunfighter without a gun. So, although poly strikers get all the love, the plastic fantastics, the tactical Tupperware, there are some really good hammer-fired guns on the market. So that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to throw in a rapid-fire version of the bio. I mean, down and dirty, quick, and then we'll get into the main topic. Blessed to have served in the military, law enforcement, combat veteran, private contractor, competition shooter, lifelong hunter, guide. Blessed by God that He got me through all those things so I could share this firsthand training, knowledge, experience with you to serve you today. Let's dive into the podcast. Number 1. The Staccato. Pick your model, they're all good. Pick whatever's applicable to you. Sadly, they only make one what I would consider full-size model. A 5-inch barrel 1911 derivative is not an XL, it's not an extra large, it's a regular size. Despite my thought that their name is idiosyncratic, I think the guns are superb. I think they are the best handgun on the market today. I have been a fan of Staccato since way before they were called Staccato. I don't even own a Staccato, I own 2 STIs. I don't care if you think they're not safe. They're a Series 70 1911. They're a double stack, but they're based on a Series 70 1911, which is what gives you a really good trigger pull. The military carried 1911 Series 70s for the better part of the 20th century. If you think that wasn't safe, then you might think the Staccato is not safe. If you've got, $3 or $4 grand to dump on a Staccato, you probably have a few bucks to throw in a titanium firing pin and a new spring. So that's a non-issue to me. Don't get a 1911 or a 2011 if you're not willing to put some work in. They are higher maintenance than other platforms. They just are. That's the nature of that beast. But they are superb. They are the number 1. I'm not burying the lead here. They're the best hammer-fired gun on the market, period. Now, if you give me some caveats, like I'm going to go hunt elk with it, then yeah, maybe you want like a single-action Freedom Arms 454 Casull. That's fine. But I'm just talking about for just combat-style handguns, for carry in a fairly clean environment, meaning inside the United States where you can maintain it. They're the best double stack, anywhere from 17 to 26 rounds, depending on the magazine that you want. They're well proven. They are crazy in the longevity. They cut their teeth in competition shooting. And if you've ever done any competition shooting, you'll know that your average competition shooter shoots far more rounds than most other people, even most other shooters, even the vast majority of law enforcement officers. They can stand up. They can take a beating. If you are willing to maintain them, give them a quick field trip and clean every couple hundred rounds, they will keep trucking. They are phenomenal. They are superb. Their ergonomics are fantastic. They were modular before modular was cool. Meaning you can change out the grip panels on them. You get that modularity. You can take a Dremel to the grip, and if you screw it up, you buy a new grip. You don't have to buy a whole new gun. A lot of the crucial moving parts are still metal on metal, steel on steel, like the slide to frame and the, hammer to the firing pin, all that stuff. A lot of the parts interchange with 1911s, which means there's a lot of aftermarket support. And if this is news to you, the Series 70 1911 triggers are second to none. They are beautiful. They are straight back. They're just delicious. So the STIs, pick your sub-model of that. They're really streamlined. They used to make, when they were STI, they used to make a lot of different models. Now that they're Staccato, they don't. But the models they make are good. That is the numero uno hammer-fired gun in 2024. If you are a 1911 purist, you will like the next pick. What is more classic than a Colt 1911? Colt still makes 1911s, newsflash. I know there's a ton of other makers on the market. I know there's all kinds of manufacturers of 1911s, both foreign and domestic. But when somebody asks for a recommendation, my number one recommendation is a Colt. Why would you not? They have so many decades of experience. They make a good 1911. You might think they're crazy expensive, but if you look at some of the other comparable models, they're not. Like a good, what I would call modernized Colt with a beaver tail and good usable combat sights, they're not overly expensive. They're quite a bit less expensive than an STI. Granted, they're not double stack. It's a pure 1911. They come in 9mm. They come in 45. I don't think there's anything heretical about a 1911 in 9mm. I really like the Colt 1911. Again, pick your flavor. I'm talking about the full-size government. Don't neuter it. Don't over castrate it and get a 4-inch or whatever. Get a full fighting 1911, a 5-inch, in my opinion. If you're going to go 1911, go big or go home. And I say that half jokingly, but from what I believe that you introduce a lot more issues when you start cutting down a 1911. It's good and proven the way that it is in its full 5-inch form. The more you deviate from that, the more quirks and foibles and potential issues you introduce. Now, you could get one that's uber small, 3-inch, and runs like a top, but I wouldn't count on it. I would count more on the full-size government 1911. And Colt is my number one recommendation. There are other good ones. Colt is my number one. Now don't worry, this is not all going to be a list of 1911 and 1911 derivatives. There are other guns. The Beretta 92! It's still going strong and better than ever in my opinion. Now, if you can pick your flavor. Any of the Beretta 92s in general I like. However, I prefer, if you're going to carry it as a carry gun, I prefer, if you want to go double single, I prefer that you go the G model, decocker only. It's what I have. It's generally not my carry gun. It's more of a bug out bag gun and a fine one. But decocker only. I don't want the safety. I want it as a decocker, so when I hit the slide mounted decocker, it only decocks. It'll still fire. I don't want it decocked on safe. It's so safe it hurts. It's like when you're trying to get into one of your accounts and it like asks for your password. And you get your password right and then it asks you to do one of those little picture puzzles. And then you get your picture puzzle right and then it sends you a code. There's a point at which there's way too much caution and safety. I think the Beretta 92, if you're going to carry it double single, is best with a decocker only, the G model. It's an easy conversion if you have a regular 92 and you want to do that. It's easy if you're a competent gunsmith. It's not easy like, taking a butter knife at your kitchen table and changing out the trigger bar in a Glock. But it's, for a competent gunsmith, it's not hard to convert to a G model. Put it that way. There is better though, and I've tried to justify getting one and I haven't yet. Perhaps I will, but now they make finally a frame-mounted, thumb safety, single action only model. Yes, please. That's amazing. They even make some where you can carry it double single or cocked and locked. I liked cocked and locked carry. I had a big discussion with one of the guys sent me messages about how great double action only is. There's nothing wrong with double action only. There's nothing wrong with double single. If I'm carrying it on my hip, that's a different use scenario than when I carry one in combat. It's just a different set of parameters. So don't over-apply lessons that don't apply to you. But I prefer, for me, single action only, hammerback, safety on. They make several different models of the 92, the 92X series, that you can carry hammerback safety on. Pick whatever flavor of one. I'm not going to get into nitpicky and say pick this exact one, right? Some people really like stainless and some people are wrong. Pick whichever one of those applies to you. They make some really good stainless models. I'm, of course, joking there. But the Beretta 92, I've said in the past, and I stand by it, if you're talking about a straight-up combat handgun in any environment, I like the Beretta 92. I think it's the best combat handgun ever devised by human beings. I like the operating system better than the more traditional tilting barrel system like a Glock uses or many other guns use. I like the falling block system. I think it has a lot of real advantages. It might be a little bit more complex, it might be a little bit more expensive, but it's exquisite and it's rugged. And I like that open top design. It can eliminate some malfunctions, which for a combat handgun I put in the plus category. I definitely think the Beretta 92 and their new frame-mounted safeties deserve a spot on the list. The next one, if you're the big fan of the rival of the Beretta 92, you will also like, and it's one of my go-to carry guns. It is the Sig Sauer 226. They still make it. It's still awesome. If you want a straight-up combat handgun, the double single is fine. I prefer, again, for a carry gun, the single action only, and they make a couple of different models. They make like the X5 series, which are delicious. They also make, if you want more of a combat carry handgun, the Sig Legion 226, which is what I have. Now, I bought mine regular without the optics cut, and I had it cut into a convertible to direct mount a Trijicon RMR, the one that doesn't take batteries, because I don't like trusting my life to things with batteries. But that is a phenomenal handgun. It definitely deserves a spot on the list. Any of the SIG 226s or 229s, again, if you want to kind of over-neuter yourself and cut a bunch off the barrel, that's up to you. But the 226, it's a phenomenal gun. I don't think I have to prove that with the history of the 226. A brief search will reveal its combat-proven effectiveness, and I think at least for me, the frame-mounted safety, single action only, is better. Not for a combat handgun, but for a carry gun, I like single action only. If you want double single and you're willing to train double single and kind of walk down the aisle with that system, it is a fine system as well. They make a lot of good models. If you want like the urban, yuppie, tactical version, you might look for an Enox if they still make those, kind of a two-tone, flashy. If you're more of a desert warrior type, they make like the Scorpion models, the desert models, if they still make those. Again, I like the single action only Legion, but they also make a double single Legion, I believe. I don't know that they make a bad one. So pick a model of the 226 and rock on. The next one, they don't all have to be metal frames. The next one, and this is going to be number 5. I will give an honorable mention, a budget pick, but the HK P30. The HK P30 is phenomenal. It's hammer fired. It's still being made. The thing that makes it come in last is, last I checked, H&K does a lot of the VP9s with an optics cut, but they don't do a P30 that I'm aware of with an optics cut, unless that's changed. And in 2024, it's hard for me to recommend a gun that doesn't have an optics cut for a full-size fighting handgun. You're talking about putting an LCP in your pocket, that's fine. But if you're talking about a fighting handgun, optics are a force multiplier. So I don't know why I would put it on the top of the list, but it's still a very, very good gun. You can have it direct cut, as far as I know. I don't see why you couldn't. But the H&K P30, it's polymer, it's fairly modular. It's not modular like a 320 where it has a chassis system, but it comes with a bunch of different back straps and things like that. The ergonomics on it are fantastic. The quality on those are fantastic. The trigger right out of the box are fantastic. Now, it's not a 1911. It's not even a good single action only 226, but it's a good trigger pull. It's a good hammer fired trigger pull, which is still generally better than a lot of striker fired guns. And I shouldn't say obviously, but it is better than a Glock. I think all but the most Kool-Aid drunk Glock fanboys would concede that out of the box, the P30 is a better trigger than a Glock. It's a good trigger. It's a good hammer-fired system. If you want hammer-fired but you want polymer, there you go. Now, I said top 5. We've done 5, but I also wanted to give a budget pick. It's a budget pick. It's not just as good as. That's why it's not in the top 5. But it's a good gun that's hammer-fired for the money. It's not even a bad gun. It's just not, I don't think, anywhere near the top 5. But if you want a budget hammer-fired gun that's not like a surplus gun or something, hammer-fired guns tend to be more complex and more expensive, which is one of the reasons that I think a lot of companies try and push you, in some ways maybe trick you into thinking you want a polymer striker-fired handgun because they're better for whatever reason, when really they're just cheaper to make. But an affordable, good, totally serviceable striker-fired alternative that's in the same price point as a lot of polymer striker-fired handguns, but has a hammer. Dun dun dun! The CZ, P07 and P09 respectively. They're both good. They're fine handguns, and they're affordable, and they've got a hammer, so I thought I would give them an honorable mention here. Anyway, with that, guys, this was more of a fun episode. Feel free to disagree, and I may have just forgotten something. Right? These were ones that I could think of while I'm at work. The other job, private security contracting, right, gives me a lot of time to think about episodes. I may have honestly just forgotten one. Maybe I did. If you think there's one that deserves to dethrone one of the top 5, throw it in there. Some of you might be thinking the CZ75, and that's a good gun. And I don't, it's not a budget pick, and I don't think it dethrones any of the ones on the list, right? I don't think it dethrones, certainly doesn't dethrone a 1911 or a Staccato, and I don't think it dethrones a SIG 226, and I don't think it dethrones a Beretta 92. Now, you could disagree with that. If I made a top 6 list, it might be number 6, but I don't think it dethrones any of the ones on the list. But if you think of something else, or you want to make the case that it should or something else should, let me know. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you listening. This is more of kind of a fun episode, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you appreciate the more substantial parts of the podcast, consider becoming a patron. Patrons get a lot of cool insider-only content. They get to ask questions and have them answered, not just by me, but by other guys in the group. I try to answer a lot of questions. That's part of my kind of daily standard routine, except for Sabbath, is to look up and see what's going on Patreon and be helpful. So if that appeals to you, and the insider-only content, because they get a lot of Patreon-only episodes that you're just not going to get unless you're on Patreon. So if that appeals to you and you want to support the podcast, consider becoming a patron. Alright, with that, your tactical tip of the day. This came from Patreon today, actually, and it was a question, and it was, guy got a pair of kind of old world made craftsmanship leather boots, which can be fantastic and long lived, but they can also be hard on your feet and require a break-in. A lot of more modern boots with modern technology don't require that break-in. You know, if you get a hot spot or a bloody spot on your foot, what do? A couple of things you can do. You can get the boot wet once your foot's semi-healed, right? Don't do it when you have a big bloody blister. But you could get the boot wet and kind of let it dry while you're moving around slightly to kind of conform it to your foot. You can also, depending on if it's like a ridge or something or a seam in the boot, you could take a piece of moleskin, cut it out and put it on the inside of the boot. You could also take some saddle soap if you want to just make that leather a little bit more supple. Saddle soap works for that. And the other thing is just be patient and consider it body hardening for your feet. Consider it making your feet that much more tougher for the apocalypse. All those other sissies are running around with blood pouring out the sides of their boots. You're going to be like, pfft, I already been there. I got this. Right, so that's your tactical tip of the day on some boot break-in issues. Your tactical verse of the day makes me think of a good ambulatory verse. For by you I can run against a troop. By my God I can leap over a wall. As for God, his ways are perfect. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He sets me on high places. He teaches my hands to make war, so that my arms can bend a bow of bronze. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.